Our students have worked very hard all semester long, performing different kinds of tests for acting. They started with very simple, very basic scenes, and they moved up to more complicated scenes, and now they're finishing the semester with a performance of a monologue that they've memorized, which is part of a bigger show. Amanda has co-taught this class with me. I'm Jordan. They are great students. They're all very talented and have worked very hard, so we hope you enjoy this performance. It's running about 45 minutes. We're not clapping after each monologue. We're actually waiting until the very end, just so the flow keeps going and everyone gets to do it at the end. So without further ado, Thtr wants...
Silence your phones.
Oh, and phones, yes.
Please.
Silence your
And
phones.
feel free to take pictures or video or whatever you would like to do. I'm sure they would love to see that.
Great. Thank you guys very much. And I present to you Thtr 160, Sonnets for an Old Century.
Yeah!
My mother taught me to kill chickens with my hands. You grab them around the neck, and you twist them around. They struggle, and some of them can really cut your back if you're not careful. Later I butchered pigs. I pretended it was a condemned man, a murderer, rapist, with no soul, who never repented. I plunged the knife into its soft throat, as it could go, and I cut, and the animal screamed like a man, and I imagined my bleeding prisoner finally understanding the meaning of his crimes. Repenting, fearing God, believing in God's wisdom, God's punishments, which I carried out. I was the messenger of God, the word of God. I said, don't kill, don't rape, don't sin. I was the terrible messenger. And this knife was my message.
I fear nothing except goats. I wouldn't kill goats. I wouldn't come near them. They have haunted eyes.
God!
Protect me. They seem like the reincarnated souls of madmen. When they call to you, it sounds like your name. I practically shit myself in fear. I begged my father to get rid of the goats. One day I cried in front of my father, and he was so offended that he hit me. He hit me over the head with the handle of the machete, and he told me, told me to stop crying like a little girl. He locked me in the goat's pen for a day to punish me. And those madmen, they prayed, they shouted, told me their stories about their past lives. It was hard to make out their words, but I understood enough. One had set his hair on fire. One had eaten rats. One had believed he was Pope John 23rd. One had sat in a room for 12 years, sitting in his own shit, dreaming about space travel. I screamed at him, and I told him, "Stop talking to me!" Worried, my father let me out around dinner time. He was going to make me spend the night there, but he changed his mind. He was afraid that an entire night with those madmen would drive me insane. I wiped my eyes, walked out of the pen. I never cried in front of him again.
We would eat liverwurst on black bread with mustard and onions and have sex. We would have sex on top of the tattered sticky pages of the Sunday New York Times. We would have sex after walking across the Brooklyn Bridge, cold October afternoons, staying home from work, angry at our office jobs, among the Walking Dead and art wannabes. We would have sex instead of air. We would have sex as burning garbage fell in our fire escape because a maniac on the floor above us decided that devils were living in his trash. We would have sex while water dripped through our ceiling because a maniac on the floor above us left the water in his bathtub running while he went off to visit a brother on Staten Island who had communicated with devils and had salient advice on how to use them for your own behalf. We would have sex while the maniac on the floor above us returned from Staten Island, fell in the hallway, and pounded the floor with his fist. We would have sex after explaining to the maniac on the floor above us that Red Hook was not on the way to Staten Island, and that we had to get the super to turn off the water in the bathtub, and the super's going to recommend to the maniac on the floor above us, who sees devils in many corners of his life, be evicted immediately for non-payment of rent and for consistently coming home from Red Hook bleeding from the face.
We had sex after an attempted assassination of the President of the United States. We would have sex while children starved, racists ran for office, war was waged on the poor, exotic and never to be duplicated forms of life were deleted. Fundamentalists dictated the terms of our living, and the hoarding classes perfected devious, more efficient ways to hoard, and the country drowned in capitalism, optimism, and bullshit! We would have sex in spasms, in waves, in circles, in small violences and secret ecstasies, and patient waiting, in doubts, in forgotten languages, in extreme loneliness, in promises kept, and wishes left unacknowledged, in ritual fantasy, in peril and in peace.
I operated a forklift, and I had my problems with substance abuse, okay? But that's all past now. That shit's gone bye-bye as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, doing hard drugs isn't technically a sin in the record books of any organized religion I'm aware of. Last time I checked, I partied. Sure, I partied. I like to kick back, shoot the shit with a few friends over a barbecue grill, Coors Light in one hand, spatula in the other, entertain the masses. I drink far more than my share. I'd get pissed. Didn't know what happened. Got a little mellow. Girls look exceptionally good. Why not? Last time I perused the holy pages, I don't believe beer or pussy were on the list of frowned upon human activities. I can say pussy if I want. And I didn't go for sodomy. So you can't fault me on that line of reasoning.
And you know, these were manslaws I was breaking. And I really do think something as small and temporary as manslaws have no real long-term effect on something as total and permanent as the human soul. That's just my opinion. The opinion of a working man. I know I can look right into the eyes of our Lord Jesus and be secure in the knowledge that the smudges on my eternal soul are slight and unimportant, and simply the wages of living in an imperfect world run by man and his laughable laws. Looks like I covered most of the known territories of the sins. Okay, the only thing maybe was, while my father was dying in Jersey, and I couldn't go visit him. No, it wasn't like I couldn't get time off, or I couldn't afford it, or the car died, or nothing. I just couldn't go. Look at him in the bed. Legless. His right arm paralyzed from the strokes. His powers to be eradicated. Facial muscles uncontrollable. Watched him staring at the television all day long, screaming the only word his mouth could form. Ma! Calling my mother. Ma! Whenever he needed her to turn him over. Ma! Find him a ball game on TV. Ma! Or turn off the harsh lights. Or put the picture of Lord Baby Jesus just a little closer. Ma! Just a little closer. Ma! Ma! Sorry I couldn't watch this. I didn't go. For years. I let my siblings do all that shit while I continue not to know, not investigate, not do one blessed thing for the man. Outside of having fantasies of killing him by suffocation and ending the pretense, the Bible reading, the and clapping, the speaking in tongues, the false hope, ending it. For God's sake, just let the poor man die, why don't you? Just let the poor man die. Thou shalt honor thy mother and thy father.
My wife, she gave her old clothes to the local church. She knew the mailman's birthday. She gave to UNICEF. There was a guy who washes car windows in front of the bank in our neighborhood. A young guy, filthy, heroin, always had a skateboard. She'd drive up to the bank, give him $1 to clean the windshields. They talk, they hang out and talk. They did this every Saturday morning. He's very good looking. She used to shoot up so she understood. I thought they were in love. couldn't stop imagining them together. I imagined them sharing a cardboard box. They do it on rusted mattresses. Passion heightened with rusted mattress spikes, stabbing their naked butts. In fact, pain is the goal. I imagine they rode skateboard together, panhandling in front of our house, all of our friends staring at her. And she'd look and sound happier with him than she ever looked and sound with me. Beneath the layers of traffic soot and sidewalk dirt, her eyes were full of freedom. The freedom to say, "Fuck you!" To stare at the other drivers at the stoplight waiting for the light to change. She said, and challenged them, and said, "Hey, are you a good person? Are you moral? Empathic? You think you are? You tell your children you are? In your prayers to God you boast that you are?" She wanted that freedom. And that freedom was something she could only get from him. Then he disappeared. After that, we would drive together anywhere. It didn't matter. There they were, like an army of vampires, bloodless in the rags and filth. They knew about her. They sought her out. They wanted her kindness. They wanted to drink from it like it was an ancient tribal river. To own her, my wife, actually began to disappear in front of my eyes. I watched helplessly as she gave away scraps of herself. First the excess, then the vital tissues, until she completely disappeared from my sight, down the tortured piranha pits of the homeless. Away from me. But happy. Alive. And finally at home.
I ran for president. No one knew me. All my life I wanted to be president. The apex of my life. So I went door to door, trying to get enough signatures to put me on the ballot in Michigan. Most people slammed their doors in my face. I never got any media coverage. But I gathered the signatures. I had a few passionate followers. I had a message. In 1990, 13% of voters were from families whose incomes were less than $15,000 a year. In 1992, that percentage dropped to 11%. In 1994, of all families whose incomes were less than $15,000 a year, only 7.7% bothered to vote. In 1989, the inequality of wealth distribution in the United States was at a 60-year high. Imagine what it is now. The top 1% of families ranked by financial wealth own 48% of the wealth in the country. The top 20% own 94% of the country's wealth. In 1989, 35% of families of color reported zero or negative net worth. So I gathered a few hundred signatures and I shook a few hundred hands. In brief moments, I made real connections with real people. Gave them a little hope. Made their country just a little bit better for them. In a few moments, there were a few people who could smell change in the air, who would witness the unlikely birth of a new nation. I ate a lot of red meat with the people. Funny, I couldn't tell if they were humoring me or not, but I drank a few cold beers.
also see it moving. Just a little. Let's pretend my hand is the moon. It's going like this. The moon has too much light. It goes past all the black air in space and hits my eyes. And I feel the hot too. The hot light from the gods on the moon. I can't hear them talking. They're too far away. I think they're mad at us. I think they want to blow us up! They talk, whispering. If we went in the clouds with machine guns and arrows, we could kill them. We hate them! The gods have no eyes. They left their eyes at home. Hearts. Squish! Their blood is really smooth and warm. Feels like this. They waited a long time. They watch us. They see everything we do. The gods on the moon will find their eyes and come down to earth and take the whole place over.
I would breathe against the window and watch the thin white cloud my breath made on the glass, and I would take a finger, write an X in the mist. Then I would move ever so slightly left or right, and I would make another small cloud on the glass. And again, I would make an X. I did this until I'd covered the entire window in that room with the white, anxious smoke of my lungs. Then I would go to the next window and start over and make X's. Row upon row, small, exact X's. Engraved in the Thtr surface my breath made on the cold window panes. I wouldn't even look outside. I never took my eyes off the small X, then the next virgin spot on which there wasn't an X. And even if I had wanted to look outside, and I didn't because there was nothing to see, it would have been pointless to look, as the other side of the window was inches thick with dirt and car exhaust and pigeon shit.
Breathing was a good thing. I had an office on Wilshire and La Brea, the Asahi building, 11th floor, a balcony that went 3/4 the way around the building. You had a view east, south, and west. Spectacular sometimes when the air was invisible. But that was rare. Most times it clung to the ground like mustard gas, like some kind of white moss, like a viral infection along the tissue of your moist lungs, like the kiss of death, like a bad chance, a freak ghost, a haunting, polluted karma warmed over holistic spiritual bullshit.
home, I was in my home, and I was contemplating another exciting night of microwave, television, and insomnia. Woo! When I noticed a bright red smudge out of the corner of my eye. So I went to the living room to look out the big bay windows, the windows that face west. The sun was setting. How do I explain this? The dirty air created the most fantastic, it was the most spectacular, it was an explosion of oranges and reds. No, that doesn't do it. That doesn't say how fuckingly beautiful that sunset was that evening, hovering like red liquid over the west. I saw lava in the sky. I saw lung tissue. I saw rose petals. I saw bloody mountains. I saw red rainbows. And I saw it change and undulate and tease. And I said to myself, I gotta go outside. I gotta get a better look at this. I gotta have one really good experience in this snow exit day. So I walked down the steps to the driveway to get a better look at the sunset.
At that very exact moment, my next door neighbor Lourdes, a woman about my age, with a waterfall of churning black hair and eyes like big radar dishes, she was coming out of her apartment to look at the pollution-created, spectacular, massively red display of, I don't know, pure glory. The sun disappeared, and the sky darkened. And I swear I'd never seen this woman in my life. And it turns out we've been neighbors for 3 years. And she was with 2 roommates, and it's a little crazy. And lately, the walls have been closing in. And I explained I lived alone, and my walls were closing in too. She came over, and we played old songs I hadn't listened to in half a century. And she told me stories of loss and sadness. And she cried on my shoulder, and I cried on hers. And we exchanged fleeting, tender fingertip touches. And I do believe this was the last time I ever cursed the air pollution in my life.
3 days in the city. Day 1 in the city. We stopped by a big candy store. My son has died and gone to heaven. He buys little packets of false tattoos. Kids wear them all the time. I'm dreading what forms of brilliant rebellion he'll be into by the time he's a teenager. He puts a little Jurassic Park tattoo on his arm and begs me to put one on my arm. I didn't want to. I felt silly, of course. But this was the first time in 6 months we spent an entire day together. Every second of the day was just me and him. He asked me a million why questions. Sad face. But I see more of myself in him than I ever had before. I recognize my own reactions.
It wasn't always like this. I resented his birth. Then one night it was 2 or 3 in the morning, and his crying woke me up. I told my wife to give him a bottle. The house was silent, and only one light burned near us. I was barely awake. I held him in the living room. It was only a few seconds before that miracle happened, and it was suddenly as if I had awakened from a deep and troubling sleep, and I was instantly aware that I had a son. A son. I was looking at him, because I'd never seen him before. And in that second, I remember so vividly even now, in that second I remember falling deeply in love with him. It was the first and only time in my entire life I actually experienced the fall, the falling in love. A swift and endless drop, down a perfectly delicious abyss. And I couldn't control myself. I held him and cried with him. I didn't want to let go. Not for another second.
Anyway, there we were on Hollywood Boulevard, in this labyrinth candy store, and my son wants me to put this tattoo on my arm. Finally, I relent. I apply the temporary tattoo to my forearm. This big green scorpion, vivid and nasty. It looks very convincing. Anyway, we walk out into the boulevard. Suddenly, a couple of young men approach us, and they're looking at me very hard. And they point to the child's tattoo of the scorpion on my arm and say something very quietly to me in Spanish. I don't understand what it is. Then one of the men points to his forearm. He has the tattoo of a spider on his arm. I don't understand any of this, and my radio's going, "Get the hell out of there! Get out now!" And I try to move on, but they won't let me move on. And my son's crying, and suddenly, one of the two men looks at my son and notices his Jurassic Park tattoo on his arm, and realizes that my scorpion is just a toy, and not a real tattoo, and I'm not part of some rival gang. And he just looks at me and says, "Que vida más loca." Sorry, mister. What a crazy life.
I think I lied. I didn't lie. I had an active imagination, but I didn't lie about this. It was a brain tumor. The deadline had come and gone. I had finished the script, I really had, but it still didn't work. It needed tweaking. I told them that at Universal that it was almost ready. Give me a couple weeks to tweak this stupid thing. I always take my time. I'm slow. Soon, but everyone in the business knows that going into it, if you can't handle it, don't fucking hire me! So, I missed the deadline. No one panics. Not yet. We agree on another deadline. That one comes and goes. Tempers under control. Another deadline. My manager is now starting to crack at the seams. Pieces of him are starting to fall off. Universal people are getting ugly. Look, I had a reputation for being excellent at my craft. Then I finished the thing and started having a brain tumor. I called the studio. The script is close, I said. But I can't finish it because I have a brain tumor. They thought I lied. I didn't lie. I didn't! I could feel it throbbing in my cranium, like Athena was pounding inside my face with her big Bronze Age spear, and this tumor started assuming shapes. Joan of Arc was burned at an imaginary stake in my mind every night. I could hear the fire in my sleep. I could smell the smoke. The doctor said Francis Melton was the first sign of a brain tumor. But it was the screaming that convinced me. It wasn't my screaming. It was the screaming of this brain tumor that had assumed the shape of Sharon Tate in my brain. This blob of extra busy brain cells that multiplied and conquered, assumed the shape of famous victims. I had the operation. They took the tumor out of my head. It's in the refrigerator in a Tupperware-like container. It's now in the shape of, well, oddly enough, me. It's a little miniature me that I talk to and got advice from. And all the neighbors, and agents in town, and actors who owe their careers to me thought I was crazy. But I wasn't. I didn't lie. My tumor is on the phone.
Our prison is the tallest structure in the country. You could see it from 100 miles away. And everyone knew that my father and I, the most wanted criminals in the country, were trapped there. The genius and his child, finally outsmarted. Trapped behind stone and steel. Or so they thought. My father, of course, had other plans. You see, after a year in prison, my father started asking the guards for extra candles. You see, he was an avid reader, and his eyes were going, so he needed a few more candles each night. My father got me more. 2 more candles each night. I knew then, plan was in effect. He was subtle.
Another 6 months passed. My father would put the grain on the high ledge of the one window. Inevitably, the seabird would land beneath the grains. The opening was small, and my father would frighten the birds so suddenly that they would flap their wings while still on the ledge. Inevitably, the wild beatings of the wings against the stone windows would shake feathers loose. They would fall to the floor of my father's cell. This would happen every day, and it was this way, slowly, that my father collected his treasure of white feathers. And he would melt the wax from his 2 extra candles and glue those feathers together. And in a year's time, fashion together identical pairs of giant wings, and in each facet until we weighed less than 100 pounds.
The day came. Through a hole in the wall, my father patiently carved out a solid rock during the years of our incarceration. We barely managed to squeeze ourselves and our mighty wings. We were outside for the first time in years. We strapped on our wings. Seconds after attaching the wings to our body, we were lifted by a current of air. When my feet left the ground, I gasped. I had never known such a feeling. I started to involuntarily kick, as if that would make me fly higher and faster, but it only dragged me down. And my father told me to knock it off. It's all in the arms, he said, and he demonstrated, as he was instantly high above me, flying homeward.
Now at this point in the story, I have to stop. To correct a misconception. It is believed by many that it was my arrogance and pride that attracted me to the sun that day and resulted in my downfall. No, it was not. It was something altogether different that brought me down. The reason I felt it was this. I was sick of my father's perfection. Okay, I'd show him my drawings, my escape plans, my elaborate and fanciful weapons, and every time he'd laugh at me, point out the obvious flaws in each and every one of them. Tell me not to bother myself because the strain would be too much for my inferior intellect. And that, of course, he was hatching a foolproof scheme. As we flew up into the blue air above the ocean that day, I flew straight for the sun. I flew towards what was warm, away from the cold father who constantly ridiculed my inferior thinking. Yes, I wanted to show him his invention was flawed, and that I knew what that flaw was. I could hear him yelling, "You idiot! You fly too high! Don't fly so high!" "Why not?" I shouted back. "The wings! The wax will melt! You're luring the wings!" That is my story. I tell it to everyone. I'm telling it to you. You don't have to believe me. I suppose in this place and time, you have to tell the truth. I am telling the truth. That is the story of my father and me before I came to New York. The wax melted. I fell out of the sky. I crashed into the ocean. I was rescued by fishermen off the coast of Maine, in a coma. I came to. I begged my doctors to go out to sea and please find the remains of my beautiful wings. I was pleasantly and firmly rehabilitated. I pretended to forget my childhood, my brilliant father, and my one incredible flight over the sea. I won't forget. I cleave to my story, imagining that somewhere nearby, my father has again escaped death, and is again laughing brilliantly at all of us.
There's somebody. I don't know who he is. I want to take this time to apologize to him. I don't know your name. I don't know what you look like. You were in the Bronx about 7 years ago. It was very dark there, and all I wanted to do was to get home. So I'm walking fast because I hate that street, and I almost didn't see you. But I did see you. Two men had you by the arms, and they were sending you head first into the front of the parked car. I couldn't see your face. These two guys were laughing. You fell to the ground. I only watched for a second. I got out of there as fast as I could. I went home. He didn't call the cops. He didn't call for help. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you're hearing this, please forgive me. Please. Forgive me.
So the baby's sleeping. I'm resting. My husband is missing in action. I'm mellow. And the phone fucking rang. I said, "What?" No answer. I said, "Who the fuck is this already?" So then she finally answers and says one thing. One sentence. "He had his baby last night, but I fucked him." Click. Man, I slammed that fucking telephone so hard, I almost broke my fucking hand. That bitch. That hija de la puñeta, me cago en tu madre. Mira qué cosa tan más fucked up. That's where the maricón was last night, with his girlfriend. And she had to call me to tell me all about it. What a class act, huh?
The first time someone else's tongue enters your mouth. The first time a child trusts you to carry them to the next room. The first time you drive safely from Boston to San Diego with someone you're in love with. The first time you watch Bird. The first time your loved one apologizes for breaking your heart. The first hummingbird. The first day of courage. The first line of Paradise Lost. The first time a stranger gives you a break. The first time you find money on the street. The first time you hear your favorite song. The first ride over Greenland. And the first time you make the decisive three-point shots in a game that really counts.
The first time you get the dog to shit outside.
The first time you read I love you at 11 sides. The first time you sleep in after fucking all night long.
The first family reunion without homicidal fantasies.
The first love letter. The first real talk about love with your child. The first time you contemplate suicide and then change your mind.
The first hangover.
The first arrest.
First acquittal. The first epiphany.
The first time you hear Lorca in Spanish. The first real friendship with a person from another race.
The first time you can't walk and your lover carries you to the next room. The first time you catch a felba at Fenway Park. The first time that you stand alone, you're scared to death, and you don't change your position. The first time you're convinced of your mortality, and you laugh. The first sunrise after the first death of a parent. The first time you forgive the unforgivable. The first time that you see the earth from space. The first time it is truly obvious that it was better to have lived at this time in this world. The first time you decide that every moment of your life should be a work of art. The first time you die and you breathe again and you speak to the living. The first time you realize that it all just would have been okay.
were all done by Yui.